Uh, my article is entitled Digital Theology from Postcolonial Feminism Perspective. This article aims to explore how digital technology augments and alters theology from postcolonial feminism perspective. And before digital technology being part of human life, the reality of injustices happen in human history. The root of all injustices is the imbalance of power relation. And the unequal power relation is legitimated in the culture of domination that could intertwine exist in the multi-layers of patriarchy, classism, racism, and imperialism. The digital culture of dominance, that the culture of dominance also exists in cyberspace today. And it challenged theology to construct a digital theology that responds to this problem. And I want to present my thoughts in three parts. The first is I discuss how digital technology augments theology by challenging it to respond to the intertwining culture of patriarchy, classism, racism, and imperialism in cyberspace. The second part is I explore how postcolonial feminism alters digital technology by offering the construction of cyberspace and hybrid space of technology. And the last part is my offer. I argued about how digital technology to postcolonial feminism perspective can empower women. Cyberspace is an extension of human culture, and Catherine Smith said that digital technology should be understood as a culture unto itself with which other cultures contend, conflict, overlap, and mix. And for that reason, the presence of digital culture can also contend the culture of dominance where injustices and violence against women happen in the offline world. And there are many evidences of this. For instance, the gender gap on the internet in especially developing countries such as Indonesia still fall short of expectation of equality. And the research held by the World Web Foundation in 2020, for instance, still shows the barriers that based on the geography, wealth, race, class, and gender. And online gender-based violence also happens in cyberspace. Some researchers, such as Christian Fuchs, also finds links between the digital system and capitalism, patriarchy, slavery, and racism in digital labor. And Mr. Quaid also reveals like colonialism in cyberspace. And Quaid mentioned that big tech corporations such as Google, Alphabet, Amazon, Facebook, Apple, and Microsoft, which is abbreviated as a GAFAM, and other giant technological corporations are the new imperialists in the international community, which is all dominated by a handful of the US multinationals. And according to Quaid, the US will gain enormous power over other countries' economy and create technological dependencies that endanger them in the risk of vulnerable continuous resource extraction. And the other one, like she's now also when slavery happens in cyberspace, and he links it to the problem of self-alienation or alienation from self. The second part of my article is about postcolonial feminism that offers a deconstruction of cyberspace and hybrid space of technology. Cyberspace is not only a room for displaying the extension of human culture in the offline world, but also it has a potential to create the new cultures. And the new culture of dominance in cyberspace can be confronted by the culture of justice. It is what I want to propose. And thus the digital theology needs the perspective of postcolonial feminism. And postcolonial feminism is an intellectual tradition with a special characteristics. It is a discourse against hegemony. It pays great attention to voices, to the voices that are hidden and removed from the history. It encourages and welcomes contribution from marginalized groups. It criticizes and analyzes the traces of patriarchy, colonialism, feudalism, racism, and imperialism, which are closely attached to theology, teaching, structures, and practices in society, including the church. And there are at least three problems that needed to be responded by digital technology using this perspective. The first one is the problem related to power relations, as I mentioned before. And the secondly is digital technology also deals with the problem of existence in cyberspace. I use the thought of G.H. Elwell said that the digital technology has radically transformed our culture at its deepest level of understanding about our world, ourselves, and relation between them. And Elwell finds that the problem in digital culture that our world is reduced to code that create the blurred boundaries between the natural and unnatural technologies of the body. And the last one is the problem related to the crisis of transcendence. And this crisis is marked by the absence of the normative principle of selection capable of transcending that a radical extension of human power and binary logic in digital culture. And Elwell sees that elevation of code over nature in biological art as a symptomatic of the unique character of the death of God in the digital culture and as the constitutive features of today's crisis of transcendence. Therefore, he offers integrity as a solution. The integrity of life encompasses moral integrity, professional integrity, physical integrity, and so it as a whole. And as a sample of the deconstruction in cyberspace, there is a research conducted by Donna Haraway, and she deconstructs the gender roles inherited in a particular relationship by projecting transgender identity in cyberspace. And her deconstruction idea is close to the fluid and fractured nature of constructed gender identity. The last part is my offer. Theology sees technology at least in three levels. The first one is as a liberator, and the second is as oppressor, and the third is value neutral. And if there is a theology, a digital theology that construct, it should be integrated with the principle of justice, not as oppressor or value neutral. And I propose here, I want to extend the idea of Ilia Dilio, who introduced the concept of the cyborg Christogensis as a symbol of incarnation. And in Christ, God becomes a hybrid cyborg. The metaphor that she used that blurs the distinction between the divine and the creation. And I'm personally attracted to this metaphor of this cyborg by Ilia Dilio. And I extend her thought, and from the machinery sides of the cyber Christ, I developed the idea that Christ is also willing to be more vulnerable and even vulnerable than an organic human, because Christ opens to be interference by forces that control the technology system. And Christ as a hybrid cyborg is a compassionate God who opens to enter the most vulnerable in the cyberspace. And the incarnation of Christ as a hybrid cyborg means to liberate the vulnerable humans who were objectified and dehumanized as the machine, especially women in the cyberspace. Women are more vulnerable to be victims in the digital technology. They are at least to risk to be object as the machine in the system that enslaves them. And the hybrid cyber Christ is God who liberates humans from being machines to be a whole human again. And Christ rejects the objectification of human, because human was not created to be a machine. And human life is not to be regulated by machine, but machines are created to assist human to be more dignified as human beings. And from the postcolonial feminism perspective, the hybrid cyber Christ as a metaphor in digital theology is a Christ who is being vulnerable to liberate women from objectification in the culture of patriarchy, racism, classism, imperialism in the cyberspace. And therefore, I see this is, it can augment and alters digital theology by the perspective of postcolonial feminism. And postcolonial feminism concerns how internet becomes a justice and a safe space for women, and furthermore for humankind, and especially for women in developing countries such as my country, I think that a digital quotient and digital literacy for women is a mandatory solution. And this is how I present the summary of my paper. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And we also have a respondent here to the paper from Oinike. Our next respondent is Elin Lockneus. She's a PhD candidate at Stockholm School of Theology, where she researches liturgical practices. She's also an ordained minister in the Church of Sweden. So welcome, Elin, and go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you, Oinike Harefa, for your brilliant paper and your work that you have done. I think it first is a really important subject that you're researching, and the perspective is really important. And I think it also really can help this larger conversation of digital theology and the field in thinking where it is and what it is doing. And I kind of have one big question for you regarding research design in one way. It's 3 parts in your paper. It's digital technology, and there's theology or digital theology, and then there's postcolonial feminism. That's kind of the 3 parts that's working together. And my question to you is how these 3 relate to each other, because I can see that they are doing that, but are they relating in different ways in different parts, or is there kind of one way that they're, I want you to kind of describe what you're doing in the paper also. Is there 3 fields and you're kind of looking at the intersection between them? Or is there three layers put on each other? It's like a cake in one way, and then you can kind of have a larger taste? Or are you bringing digital technology and post-colonial into digital theology, into one field? Or are you kind of moving them around or bringing them in, or are they kind of staying still? Are they more or less important? Is one more central than another? Or is there, as I kind of hear you're talking now, is the field digital theology and digital technology kind of the area of research and the material that you're working with, and the post-colonial feminism, kind of the tool of analyzing it? Is that what you're doing? So I think thinking through these questions might help the text also to become a little bit more clear in what you're doing. You're really good at presenting others, and I hear them well through your voice, and the composition has a clear line. But I kind of want to hear what you're thinking. In the last part, there's more of you, but I would like to encourage you also to use your voice and let us hear you in the paper. So it's not that easy when you're a PhD student, I know that, but I want to hear what you're thinking and saying. And I think the largest question to everyone in this is kind of, how do we do interdisciplinarity? Because I think that's what you're doing, and that's what my question to you is aiming at. Yeah, I think I will stop that, but thank you for doing this important work and bringing it into the larger conversation.